Hello, fellow homesteaders. I'm Tara with New Life on the Homestead, and today I'm out and about foraging some nuts. I'm looking for hickory, not just one kind of hickory, but 4 different types, and acorns and walnuts. If you live in the Midwest, there are 4 types of common hickory nut trees. There's shellbark, which these came off of. This is what the nut looks like. On the inside, extremely hard nut to crack. And here's what one looks like when it falls right off the tree. Give you an idea of size here. And there are shagbark, also known as king bark or king hickory. They are the king of the hickory nut family. They are very large, almost as large as a walnut. And when they fall to the ground and are ready to eat, they have a green husk on them, similar to a walnut, but it's more serrated, like the shagbark. We have a shagbark tree right next to one of our shellbarks, but the squirrels beat me to that today. You gotta get out awful early to beat the squirrels, and the deer to the acorn. There's also pignut hickory and bitternut hickory that are very common in the Midwest and other regions of the country. We have all 4 types here in our homestead. I'm going to dig around and see if I can find some other nuts and lay them out in a comparison so you can see all the hickory nuts together. I'm hoping to find at least one shagbark that the squirrels haven't gotten yet, and we'll add that in a photo or maybe another very short video. If you're not sure what a hickory tree looks like or how to differentiate between them, we'll have some pictures here in the article. Now, once you get your hickory nuts, I picked up these 2 handfuls off the ground in about 3 seconds. Grandkids love to come out and hunt them with me. It's a great activity for your children or grandchildren on the homestead, is go out and hunt nuts, learn how to identify the tree by the bark and the leaves, and collect them and learn how to use them and preserve them. Now, these are very hard nuts to crack. This one does not feel super hard. Sometimes a squirrel will miss one, or they'll go by it because there's something wrong with it, that a worm is in it or some infestation. I'm looking through. Here's a nick right here on it. I don't think that is a wormhole. I think it just fell and hit something hard. Sometimes the wormhole is obvious, and sometimes you just get a wormhole inside the husk, but not the nut itself. And as hard as these nuts are, I'll let it ping here on the back of the side-by-side. That's how hard they are. As hard as they are, a worm can get into there, or disease. So they'll pass them by if they're not any good. And actually, the one I just dropped, you can see right there, there's a hole that a worm burrowed into. So this is not going to be a good nut. Now, to crack the husk, and it's not going to help you with getting the nuts open, you'll still need a nut cracker, or some folks do in my neck of the woods. They drive over them with a car or a tractor. But I usually use a ball peen hammer, but I didn't see one handy, so I grabbed a regular hammer. And if you just give, that's a hard one, a couple of cracks typically on a hard surface like a rock, you can open it up. I got one little piece of it off here. That's all that came off with that pounding. And when you're out in the woods, you don't want to be packing back a bucket that's full of a bunch of bad nuts or weighing yourself down. There we go. In your pockets with nuts that aren't going to account for anything. So you can do a quick little test. Still working to get this one out. It shows you how hard the husk is to let you know what you're in for with getting the hickory nut open to get out the meat. Not actual meat, what we refer to it as, but the good nut part of it out if the husk is this difficult. Oh my gosh. I'm just going to use my fingernails. I had a lot more fingernails before I began homesteading. And peel it off there a little bit. I'll pound some more. And don't worry, no matter how hard you crack, there we go. You are not going to crack that hickory nut with a ball peen hammer, or unless you're like Behemoth Man with a regular hammer. So you have the nut out, and what you can do to test to see if your nuts are any good is similar to the sink or float test you can do to test your farm eggs. Now this one also has a wormhole, probably why it was so readily available on the ground. Now this doesn't work if they're still in their husk. That's why you need to take your hammer or grab a rock and just pound them a bit. There's a few in here in my bucket. And it doesn't take a lot of water. Just throw back some water in your backpack, or if you happen to be hunting next to a stream or a creek, just an inch or two. Just a regular bottle of water in an old ice cream container. And I'm going to lift it up here so you can see what I did. And I'm going to have to move the tripod a bit to get it to a level spot, so you can see what's going on inside my old ice cream bucket. If they are floating, they are not any good, or they don't have very much meat in them. And you need to determine, depending on how many nuts you've collected, if it's going to be worth the bother to pry one open when it doesn't have very much meat. So I have two that are sunk to the bottom, that have remained on the bottom, so those are nice good ones, worth the effort to crack open. And then the other 5 are all floating. And as I pointed out, several of them I could see wormholes in, which will cause it to float. What makes it float is similar to the eggs. If there's a lot of air in there, it creates buoyancy, and they'll float. And that air could be caused by not much meat in there, which you could go ahead, if you really need some nuts, go ahead and try to open them up. But lots of times they just didn't develop well, or there's a wormhole. So you can inspect the nut all around. See, this one has some weight to it, and oftentimes you can feel by your hands, especially when you have one good one and some that are really light. You think, oh, there's not much in this, and you just throw it back right away. But this one here has some weight to it, and I am not seeing any obvious wormholes. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my keep bucket. And these other ones that I found wormholes in, they're very lightweight, and they kind of sound hollow. I'm going to throw them back in case a squirrel wants them in mid-December when they're really hungry. This same trick here will work with any kind of nut that you're foraging, be it acorns, walnuts, different type of hickory nuts. And I'm going to go ahead and toss another one in here. Yay, it sunk. So there's another good nut. You can sometimes tell by the shell how old they are. A little bit more difficult after a rain. I just got this one wet. This shell here, this one's softer and discolored. And of course it's already been opened up, but there you go. You can see the inside is kind of raunchy looking. But this one is hard, not mushy at all anywhere, no goo coming out of it, and looks still pretty secured. And this hole is here, is just the bottom of the nut. That's not a wormhole. So this one should be good. You can throw it in your water, but they're all going to float when they have the husk on. So it's not really going to work for your test. Gives you an idea how to find them. And, well, once you find them, how to open them up and to test them out. And we'll show some identification, how to tell the different hickory nuts apart. And in another article and video, we'll show you how you can preserve them and process them and all the different uses for nuts that you may or may not have known. If I miss some use that you have for any type of nuts, please feel free to add it to the comments or share your pictures on our social media pages. We'd love to see what everybody makes and learn something new from our readers. We might not have known to use nuts in a certain recipe or a certain handy around the homestead way.